Hello and welcome back to the Dukascopy TV studio. Now, amidst all the drama of the Eurozone, we've brought you a little bit of light relief today. Julien Schaerer from Antiquorum is back in the studio with us. Julien, thank you very much for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, you're going to be sharing with us some timepieces from an auction that took place this weekend, yes?
Correct, yeah, exactly. I just wanted to bring you a selection of 4 different items from different periods and different styles, and we'll go through them and explain a little bit why the results are so good and so strong despite whatever thing's happening in the world right now.
Absolutely, because you did experience quite extraordinary sales at the auction weekend, didn't you?
We did. That's the amazing thing is we're still experiencing world record kind of levels that we've never reached before, and it's furthermore for us the proof that for the rare and exceptional items, but that's in all arts confounded, the prices are still absolutely amazing, and they're proving to be for a lot of our clients a serious form of alternative investment right now.
Okay, so if we take a look at, can you talk us through this piece, please?
Sure. So this is Langenzoene. It's Pour le Mérite Tourbillon. It was launched when the factory relaunched itself. It actually closed after being bombed after the Second World War. Then it had a huge period of inactivity, and then it relaunched with this watch as the milestone of their knowledge. This particular piece was made about in 1998. It's believed that they made about 20 to 25 pieces, and we offered it, just to say, we offered it with an estimate in the 180 to 240,000 Swiss franc range, and it ended up selling to a buyer in Russia for 340,000. So lots of interest, even surprised me in terms of how good it did, but just the proof that for the rare items that are limited and of exceptional quality, people are willing to pay what it takes.
And which items did prove the most popular at the sale? Is it the rarer items, or what specific qualities were bidders looking for?
Well, obviously it's always demand, and that obviously very much depends on which brand is collected the most. But usually rarity and condition are the most important factors that are coming out right now to determine a successful sale.
Okay. Moving on to this watch, what have we got here?
Yeah, this is a classic Patek Philippe. It's the perpetual calendar chronograph. It's a model that they produce for almost 15 years. It's a reference 3970. It's in white gold. It just has the particularity that the dial, instead of being the usual stick baton markers, actually has Arabic numerals, which makes it rare because it was custom ordered by the client this way when he ordered the piece at the store, and had it not had that, it probably would have been worth about 100,000, but just because of the specificity in the dial, it ended up selling for 150,000 because of that little detail. And today, for these kind of collectors, everything is in the small details.
Of course. Now, we'll be moving on to a slightly older timepiece in a minute, but is there a big differentiation between the interest from more vintage timepieces to more modern timepieces?
I mean, it depends in what kind of sense. I think it appeals to a different kind of collector. Obviously, usually the more modern pieces right now appeal to the newer kind of generation of collectors that are coming, and the older pieces will go back, but to the pocket watches, for example. Obviously, the new generation is not so interested in those kind of pieces. It usually is the interest of more mature collectors that have been in the market already for probably 15 or 20 years already, or obviously for museums, that wish to exhibit them if they don't already own it in their own collection.
And again, moving on to another beautiful timepiece. What is it that we've got here?
Yeah, so it's a Rolex Submariner. It's a reference 6202. It's, in the end, not so far from the modern Submariner that everybody wears today. Obviously smaller in size, but, answering to the demand back then. But it is one of the first example of the Submariners that were ever made. It's got the particularity that actually it's retailed monometer on it, which usually it would have said Submariner, but here they kind of were testing it, the different kinds of names that they could use for the Submariner, and just because of that they made very few examples. There were only 4 known up until today, and it sold at the auction for 45,000 Swiss francs.
And are we seeing bidders coming from a specific region? Is there a higher number from a specific global point?
I think the interesting thing is that, the market is becoming very segmented depending on what their interests are. Usually, the sports watches, if you're talking about Rolex sports watches, which is a very important part of the vintage market, is usually worldwide. There's no really specific area, but we could say, obviously Europe, America, and Hong Kong and Japan are those markets interested in that. And then if we go to the more vintage parts, usually it's Europe almost exclusively because they've already experienced that collecting trend for the last 15-20 years. But now obviously for modern Patek Philippe, for example, China has become very important in terms of the collectors and the disposable income that they are having, obviously, and they represent today in our business about 40% of our total business, just mainland China outside of Hong Kong.
Do you think it does represent then a broader idea of the economic sentiment, or is something like this really very specific on a person-by-person basis? No,
I think you definitely have a reflection of the economical force of a different country when the bidding comes. For example, we've definitely noticed a weakening in terms of U.S. bidders in the last 3-4 years, which for me is kind of was a reflection of the U.S. economy not being so strong. The in-between transitional government before Obama was re-elected. So all those factors in the end, the bonus that the bankers are being paid out at the end of the year, all that impacts our business some way or another.
Moving on to this last timepiece, which I have to admit is a particular favourite of mine of the selection that you've brought in. Can you talk us through this pocket watch, please?
Yeah, it's a fantastic pocket watch. It's thought to have been made by Henri Capt, which is one of the great watchmaker of the time. It's about circa 1810, and it features a kind of variety of functions. One, it has the automaton, so if you look on the dial, you'll see that actually the characters actually move, usually playing the harp and the little duck moving backwards and forwards on the dial. It's musical as well, so on demand you can have a little kind of tune that's being played, and it's also a repeater, so if you actually activate the bow, then you will actually hear it ringing for the hours and the quarters for the time. And then on the back, which is the final side, obviously you have the erotic scene, which is always hidden inside, so it's not visible to anybody on the outside, but obviously today is very much liked by the Asian countries in general, China in specifically, because they like that combination of that erotic and the automatons together. So we had a lot of interest. As I told you, it ended up selling in China, obviously, and it made 147,000 Swiss francs at the auction.
Julien, thank you very much. When can we next see some of your timepieces?
Well, we'll have our next auction in Geneva on March 12th. And, as always, I say, come down and come and view the pieces on exhibit that we have in our office before the auction day.
Julien, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much.
The Dukascopy TV team will be keeping you updated on all of the latest financial stories, so stay tuned.